everyone. Today we have our another new episode and we will discuss on impact investment. We have our world famous speaker Dr. Tamanna and Mr. David Smith. Dr. Tamanna, what you want to discuss about impact investment?
Impact investment, it's basically, it runs into the companies, organization, and funds where, it's not just about financial gains, but it's also contributing to the social setup of a particular country or a particular, or for the world, for example. It is kind of similar to philanthropy also, or CSR, for example. And it does what is possible, the best possible means, whereby you have financial benefits, but you also, alongside, you do have, the right kind of social impact in the world. So yeah, for example, environment. For example, a company, if it is, it knows that they have pollution because of their thing. So what they would do is, they would try to lessen it. And so I guess that is, many of these things are there, where, um, the fact of this thing is there. So, I guess, philanthropy is something which is majorly into this particular thing. And yeah.
Thank you, Mr. David Smith. What you want to discuss about impact investment and how we can develop good strategy for impact investment?
Well, Sri, thank you very much. Impact investment has multiple faces to it. You have impact investment at the individual level, you have impact investment at company level, you have it at a broker financial level, like with mutual funds and others like that, investing in companies. You also have investment, particularly by governments and by NGOs. Uh, you see a lot of the investing that some of the other folks are doing, like the International Development Bank, USAID, and others that are NGOs, really meet the requirements for impact investing. And then at the lowest level, and in some ways, some of the most impactful level, you see individuals helping individuals with impact investment. And I can talk a little bit more about that. But if you begin to look at it there, as it's like she said, it's how do you put in place a general investment strategy that creates not only a financial return, but also creates a positive social or a environmental impact. And in particular, as you look at companies, you then go and look at how you impact, considering a corporation's commitment to corporate social responsibility, or even their duty to serve society as a whole. And you see that in many different ways. On your prior programs in the past brief, we've talked about things like ESG investing, which is environmental, social, and governance, which many corporations are putting into their actual plan now. We've also talked about social responsibility investing, or SRI. And there are two approaches that are to this type of impact investing that are directly tied to particularly large corporations. And there's a lot of trying to understand impact investment and whether it's profitable or not. One organization try to look at institutional impact investors, not individuals, not the governments or NGOs, but institutional impact investors. And they found that 88% of the institutional investors reported that their impact investments met or exceeded their expectations. And other studies show that the medium impact fund, these are the mutual funds and things, realize about a 6.4% return is compared to a 7.4% return from non-impact uh, investing mutual funds. So you can see there's a lot of different ways you can begin to put some of them. But the bulk of the fund investing in impact investing is done by institutional investors, which are hedge funds, pension funds, private foundations, and banks. And these are the ones who are putting the impact investing funds together. And you're beginning to see that go dramatically. The other big growth area in impact investing right now is an area called microfinance loans, which they particularly provide small businesses in emerging nations with startup or expansion capital. Uh, I gave an example as we spoke about this earlier, Sharif, where I personally have been involved in some of these microfinance loans with some individuals in Africa who are trying to start businesses, who are trying to buy, for example, solar cells or sewing machines to be able to start businesses, and needed the funds to kick that off, and which is a very different impact investment than someone trying to uh, deal with climate change at a national level or beyond that. And all of those are good examples of impact investment going forward there. Uh, The biggest markets, though, today for impact investment are in healthcare, energy. The energy, it's particularly clean and renewable energy, education, and agriculture. And those are really the largest markets right now. Uh, and I think they will continue to be the largest markets uh, as we see in impact investment. One of the new trends that has really just started is we're beginning to see basically P3s, public-private partnerships, being put into place around targeted impact investment. That this could be within a city, it could be within a region, a nation, or it could be multinational. As you look at these public-private partnerships that are targeting impact investments. So, Sharif, I think that is some of my initial remarks on this.
Yes, so
Thank you,
I guess
Dr. Tamanna, especially. Yeah.
yeah. So one of the specific areas which we need, which impact investment looks at is also gender lens investment. Now, gender lens investment, if you look at Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, I mean, at the other day we had a interview on our national channel where she was talking about maternal mortality during the pregnant women. So they are kind of investing in these kind of things. Despite the fact that they're corporate and their whole business is totally different, but they are into impact investment majorly. So what gender investment is, I mean, for the people who are listening, is a subsection of impact investment, and it refers to investments which are made into companies, organizations, and funds with the explicit intent to create a positive impact on gender. Investments which promote gender equality and address gender-based issues can be made by investing in gender-led enterprises which promote gender equality through hiring. For example, women in position of authority or in their supply chain. So women are kind of employed in these kind of places. They are given chances. Till the time you don't give chance to women, they will never be able to prove themselves. So they have to be recruited at the highest level. So and now governments also do that, but that's, as a welfare state, India would consider it to be its own social responsibility to take care of all these issues. So women, for example, in our constitution itself, we have written in our fundamental rights, right to equality, Article 14. So, the government is obliged to perform these functions. So till the time that doesn't happen, the government successive rate in gender lens investment is very less. So when governments perform slightly less, it is the responsibility of other social organizations, other corporates to enter into the picture so that they can align with the government and do something better for gender, for women. So genderless investment is in fact growing rapidly now. More than 100 funds are open to private investments. In 2018, the number of genderless assets under management grew by 40%, and demand is rising with major banks offering gender lens bonds, including NAG, Goldman Sachs, Merrill Lynch, and many others. So I guess these issues are so deeply imbibed in our societies. Till the time, for example, environment, as David was also talking. Environment is something, for example, if the whole issue is about forest versus dam. So these issues would be resolved only by deliberative democracy, where people talk to each other, and the governments have to listen to the local people. So so similarly, for example, we had a, uh, um, car car the Tatas are manufacturing a car. So it was first established in West Bengal, but West Bengal was totally against that particular issue, and so it had to be shifted to Gujarat. So the government listened to the plight of the people. They said that it's going to be total chaos in the state, and we do not want that to happen. So nano car was then manufactured in Gujarat. So I guess that is what is happening. Environment and gender lens are something which are very important and have to be taken extremely seriously by most of the corporates and governments in per se. Thank you.
Sharif, she's 100% correct and where she's heading with that. And that one of the interesting things in impact investment, the impact investment could be a cause. It could be, I want to reduce coal emissions and therefore reduce the carbon footprint, and I can impact invest that way. As she mentioned, it could be looking at a group of people. I could be looking at doing an impact investment based on women entrepreneurs. I could do an impact investment based on looking at families which have a single parent, be it a male or a female. I can do impact investments looking at how do I create innovation in underserved areas? How can I create economic development, for example, as we mentioned earlier, in small villages in Africa or in other parts of the world? So the opportunity for investment is very broad, and it can be personal, it can be at all the other levels like we talked about. One of them that I particularly like looking at is the generational approach to impact investment. And what we see is that millennials are actually the one generation that is investing the most money today through impact investment. And that kind of goes with how they've been raised, what they have done, and all of their backgrounds that they can bring to play there. And the as she was mentioning, there is a very big area of looking at things like the environmental, at how do you look at global impacts? How do you look at agriculture? How do you look at climate action? How do you look at animal, the fact that we're losing so many species of our animals. How do you look at aqua investing? Ocean health is one of the other large areas of impact investment that you begin to see that you have the ability to there, and impact investments can also go and look at corporate responsibility. Um, and one of the other new trends is how can you do impact investment that serves many different means and targeted means. I was on a flight yesterday, returning to Austin from Oklahoma City, and the gentleman next to me happened to have been a rancher who raises cattle. And we got in a discussion about how he uses genetics, how he uses DNA, how he uses sensors, how he begins to use a lot of artificial intelligence tools and things to better manage his fields, to better manage his cattle and things. And then I mentioned to him that the topic you had today was impact investing. And his comment is if you really want to help change the world and have a huge impact from impact investment. Yes, most of the interest today is in green and how to prevent the environment. But he said if you want to really change the world, the impact investment should be in agriculture. And how do we grow more plants? How do we grow more food stocks? How do we grow more aqua stocks? Because there is such a shortage of food in so many parts of the world. And that, as we've heard people like Talif say in prior broadcasts today, how can people focus on being environmentally correct? How can people focus on sustainability? How can they focus on many of these other issues we talk about when they're struggling day to day to put food on the table for their children and to put food on the table for their family? And I thought this gentleman's comments were insightful, that he says his yield, the quality of uh, his ranch operations, the quality of and the amount of crops he can produce have increased hundreds of percent based on that. And he says, like I said, he said, if we could take this technologies and spread it around the world, it would be a tremendous impact investment that could help feed the world, which is one of the critical problems that, Sharif, we don't talk a lot about on your program, but it's one of the critical problems that's facing humanity globally today. And it's not just the ability to use the advanced technology, but how do we recover the land? When we talked about the mangrove forest, Sharif, part of that is how can that protect land space? How can we take nutriments? How can that protect the animals and the fish that are part of that ecosystem? And preserving mangrove forests is a very interesting way of impact investment, a targeted way to do impact investment as well. So what we see is in so many of the cases, and I apologize, doctor, for this one. I often talk about how everything in the world is a system of systems. And when I look at how we have the opportunities for impact investment, we can invest very discreetly. We can invest in the ecosystem, or we can invest also in systems that touch across many different areas and enable different things in there. And some of them, like the agriculture one, if you think about if I can increase my crops, if I can increase our ability to grow things like mangroves, if I can increase our ability to grow trees that can help clean the carbon out of the atmosphere, is we can begin to look at some of the ways to take carbon and sequester it into aqua, like part of what the mangrove forests do, because they remove a lot of carbon from the air and present it into the sediments under the water there. All of those are things that have great impact investment, And they're outside of the things we see corporations do. They're outside of what we see the mutual funds do. So Sharif, there's just so many different areas for impact investment. And I hope this discussion here and this dialogue has helped open us up to some of the targets. And like I said, just the happenstance of this gentleman sitting next to me on the airplane yesterday and us talking about this for a couple of hours just opened my eyes to some of the other areas these impacts could be. So Dr. Sharif, back to you.
Yes,
Dr.
so
Tamanna, yeah.
yeah, so it is, this is also called socially responsible investment, as well as green or ethical investment. So ethics needs to, right now in the world, in the academia, for example, we have a lot of talk about ethics. Everywhere we are talking about ethics and morality. This was something which Kant spoke about, ethics, and now it's come a full circle, and now the whole all the universities are everywhere, think tanks, etc., looking at the whole concept of ethics, as a major subject to be taught. And because ethically, human beings are becoming totally, they're totally disgusting. I mean, many of the things which are going on. So ethical investment would mean, reducing the whole, reducing investment into pornography, for example, or fast food, tobacco, alcohol, weapons, fossil fuel. Many of these issues need to be covered, for example, and investing in these should be reduced, and as much as possible, and a greener world, which is looking at the whole ethics of, ethicality of the environment, or ethicality of a gender lens, or ethicality of children or older people, whatever, I mean, for example, what should be shown to the children, so those kind of things at the private level also need to be taken care of. So at the public level, for example, we could talk about, uh, for example, the women participation in politics. So that would be government's role in increasing the ethicality of parliament. So it would look less unethical, because all men are dominating and women are not there. I really wonder if women were more in power, because right now we do not have a world where women are at least equally in power. I'm not saying more, but equally in power. And it's known that in Scandinavian countries, where women in their 30s and 40s are ruling, it's a more peaceful world. Australia, for example, had for a certain time a lady prime minister. So I guess all these issues are something which have to be taken care of. The whole ethicality of gender should be understood as the key requirement right now. So because women are different, and their differences have to be recognized. So till the time ethics does not recognize difference, that for example, the difference between rich and poor. So the poor, for example, would not be able to buy some certain things, but rich can. So the whole concept of corporate social responsibility is there. So that they are included. So in the universities, for example, the race or the caste, for example, in Indian case, the government has provided for reservations for the economically weaker sections, or the lower caste, for example. So that is the ethicality of government, but that's still to be taken care in the corporate sectors. So the CSR and impact investment need to take care of the lower castes, as well as the economically weaker sections, who do not have the power to reach a certain stage, till the time they are unable to invest in their education, for example. So they aren't able to invest in their education, and that's what the education is something at the primary level, should be funded by impact investment. So, yeah.
Sharif, let me jump and just tag on with what she said, because what this does is it really takes us back to the 17 goals out of the Sustainable Development Goals, or the 18th if we listen to some of our other presenters. Those goals, the first goal is no poverty. The second sustainable goal is zero hunger. The third is really ensure healthy living and promote well-being for all. The fourth one is ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote, this is the most important part of this one, and promote lifelong learning opportunities. Uh, as we know, we're in a time where lifelong learning is extremely important and it has to be embraced. The next one is gender equity, which she has spoken a lot about. Next one's clean water and sanitation. And then you see access to reliable, affordable, and sustainable energy. Then a decent work and economic growth. This is where you see particularly the economic development goals come in. It is looking at full and productive employment, and how does economic development work in all the different areas. Next one is then industry, innovation, and infrastructure. In many parts of particularly the developing world, this one is exceedingly important and is one which is prime for impact investment, where impact investment could help create a water supply for an area that uh, cannot promote agriculture because of lack of water. Uh, the 10th Sustainable Development Goal is reduce inequalities. The 11th is sustainable cities and communities. Uh, the 12th one is ensure sustainable consumption and production patterns. Sharif, this is back where we talked on your program about the circular economy and how that is very active there. The 13th Sustainable Development Goal is climate action. And climate action is really the urgent action to combat that. Next, the 14th Sustainable Development Goal is life below water and its sustainable use of the oceans, the seas, and the marine resources. Then, while the 14th goal is under the water, the 15th Sustainable Goal is on land. Protect, restore, and promote the use of the ecosystems, manage the forests, combat deforestation, halt and reverse land degradation, halt the loss of biodiversity, manage the type of chemicals we use that have impacts across the other part of the ecosystem. 16th sustainable goal is really peaceful and inclusive society for development, justice for all, and to build inclusive institutions at all levels. And finally, the 17th Sustainable Development Goal is how do you put global partnerships in place? And impact investing could be part of all of those uh, Sustainable Development Goals. But the last one, number 17, directly targets how do I put these type of funds in place? How do I put these types of impact investment opportunities in place? But as you've heard me say, this is like the old saying, it takes a village. Impact investment is not one time. It's not one target area. It goes from individuals working with individuals to groups like the United Nations working globally. And that is what's so important about impact investments. And it opens the door to hundreds and thousands of different vehicles that you can use to drive impact investment, Dr. Sharif. So I hope just going through the UN sustainable goals gives us even a better feel of how impact investment can be used.
I guess another issue which we need to look at is health. a universal health system where because in countries like India, poor are dying, and they do not have, for example, a expensive disease like cancer. If a poor person who cannot even get proper meals in the day, for example, the blue collar workers, the ones who are like working in factories, or the ones who are like working on the roads, for example, cutting stones, how will they be able to achieve their cure in a society where it's not being universally funded? So I guess in developing world, we need funds, we need investment here in this particular sector in a major way, because till the time health is not there, you can't that happiness is missing somewhere. So I guess health is something which is very important, and it should be the focus of the government. For example, though government has certain policies, but it's still not doing the right effect. For example, a blue collar worker has to go to a public hospital, which in India would not be providing the right kind of uh, healthcare. But the rich people can go to the best of the hospitals, and they can go abroad, for example, to get themselves cured, and that's a real help for them. But that's something, that aspiration is beyond the thought of any of these poor people. So I guess health is another issue which has to be majorly focused upon in SDGs as well. So yeah.
Mr. David.
Well, Sharif, I was hoping for a little bit of direction where you want me to go with this, because I can go many, many different places with it. But to me, the bottom line is that as I look globally, impact investment can be used for developing nations. It can be used for the global poorest nations that we have. And impact investment could be used also in the largest developed nations we have too, uh, to do it. For example, here in the United States, I've been involved with some impact investment in wireless internet connectivity into the rural environment. There, that population in the United States has really very limited access to the internet, much like many other parts of the world. And while I can make the general statement that the impact investment should cover internet access globally, but the target impact investment, to look at it, to solve problems we go forward, is where a lot of the action can be. And that is a very good one. Sharif, the other problem with impact investment, particularly as we look in the globally, is there's not a good standard for measuring the impact of impact investments. So what type of key performance indexes are we going to track within impact investment? The other is, what can we do to ensure that the majority of funds that are invested are actually spent in the area of impact? One of the studies out of the World Bank found that looking at a number of their impact investments, that as high as in some places 60, 70% of funds are not spent as the funds were intended to be spent of solving the problem. But they went to other places and were diverted and did not have impact. We hear of that all the time today as we listen to impacts of some of the things around the Russian invasion of Ukraine, with how money that was supposed to be spent inside Russia was diverted. We hear that in many places, but that is an area with the technologies we have, with some of the blockchain, with some of the other things, that we can use those to help meet some of the criticism of some of this type of funding. The other problem with impact investment, particularly at some of these scales, is it doesn't take a lot of money, for example, to help a family or a group of families in Africa, like I mentioned earlier, uh, be able to put solar cells and batteries and buy some sewing machines to create an economic growth for their families and for provide services and products for the region. But it's also how can I duplicate that? But scalability, how can I take a good success like the ones that she was talking about, the ones we see in numerous places around the world? How can we take those and how can we make it scalable to go and give to others? How can we put the education in place? Uh, Impact investment, like so much we talk about, Sharif, needs to have education so that the average people can understand it, so that the government leaders can understand it, so that the corporations can understand it. And only as we pull this technopolis together, pull all these groups together to work with each other, can we truly have the impact that is necessary for impact investment to achieve the goals of many of the areas which impact investment is targeted to. So it's that problem, Sharif, where things like what you're doing with setting up the education of awareness, of helping pull teams together, of helping provide vision to let people rally around and target. These are the important elements that have to be met for us to be successful with this. And Sharif, I just want to applaud you again for the jobs that the World Talent Economic Forum and the School of Talent Economic is doing as you begin to address these goals and unite the resources across the government sector, the academic sector, the commercial sector, and yes, in this instance, the individual sector in addressing this type of global challenges and the opportunities they present. So thank you, Dr. Sharif.
Thank you. Dr. Tamanna, what's your closing remarks for today's session?
I feel, like another point I wanted to add before just giving my end remarks. Religion can also play a major role in this particular area. I mean to say about religion as well as spiritual groups. For example, the origins of social responsible investing may date back to religious society of friends, Quakers. In 1758, the Quakers Philadelphia yearly meeting prohibited members from participating in slave trade, buying or selling of humans. So, for example, right now in India, we have several spiritual groups, yoga groups coming up who are looking at the whole concept of health, who are also all comprehensively looking at health and how to stop people from consuming alcohol or any of these things. So religion is playing a major role. So I guess we should not underestimate the power of religious groups, which can be tagged along the government in a way that doesn't it doesn't harm anybody in particular, and they are able to take the whole society together rather than dividing. For once, religion should not divide but unite. For example, poverty, employment, health, etc. are something which are majorly central to the whole concept. And so for example, in India, we have many of these channels, religious channels, where yoga is taught free of cost. So so those things can help people who are in abject poverty to be able to come out of it. So what I feel is impact investment is extremely important, and it should be increased in number, and as much as possible it should be done by both the governments and the corporates and individuals in their own particular homes, so that ethics is something which we now come back to it again. I mean, the world needs to have more ethics. For example, the wars which we are seeing right now. So ethicality of, if we were taught ethics at the basic levels, I guess these problems would be at least lessened to a certain extent.
Thank you. David Smith, what's your closing remarks for today?
I've covered a lot of ground today, and I 1000% agree with her that religious institutions can and do help. The micro investments I made in Africa were with a group of business executives that I'm involved with called Austin Christian Executives. And we undertake projects like that all the time. And so religious institutions of all different types and all persuasions can have a very important impact in impact investment. And if we go back through thousands of years, we see that true with the way religious groups have funded opportunities and activities. Same token, we're looking at how individuals can help, how governments can help, how corporations can help, how financial instruments like mutual funds can help address this area. So, Sharif, this is an area of impact investment that has many, many opportunities, has challenges, but is one that, particularly as I look at generations, the generations like the millennials want to see what are the results of where they're putting their money. And this is one of the things that's driving the big spike we're seeing right now in impact investment. And again, this is not charity. Impact investment is investing. It expects a return. And that is one of the things that make this different from charity. And if you expect return, there's more accountability. That's why, like I mentioned before, things like KPIs, key process areas of things, are very important as you do impact investment. And one of the other best practices I've seen in impact investment is you do not invest all the money on a project at one time. You do it through tranches, much like Dr. Sharif, as you've seen in the startup community. Venture capitalists and others will give money to companies in tranches as they meet milestones. That is one of the newer things you're seeing in impact investment, is using that best practice out of the way to fund startups used to fund things for impact investments as well. So Dr. Sharif, great topic. It's one with many variations. I know you are creating impact investment funds within Bangladesh and the other areas you're doing. And this is a great model to be duplicated around the rest of the world. So once again, Dr. Sharif, thank you so much for letting me be part of this today.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. David Smith, and thank you, Dr. Tamanna, for your continuous support for World Talent Economy Forum. And I request all of our audience, please share our content as much as possible. Thank you. Bye-bye and take care.